Good morning. My name is Hue Karreman. I'm a large animal veterinarian and have worked as a dairy practitioner since 1995. I'm a USDA Accredited Veterinarian, Category 2, to help in emergencies as needed, and I'm licensed to practice in North Carolina. I'm a member of the American Veterinary Medical Association and the American Association of Bovine Practitioners. My wife and I, Suzanne, run a dairy farm, Reverend's Farms, near Chapel Hill, North Carolina. We have 60 dairy cows, mainly on pasture, and we sell our milk to a local cheesemaker nearby Chapel Hill. We've had a herd share program, and where people pay us to own a minority part of the herd, and in return they get some milk every week, a gallon or two or three, depending how much they own of the cows. Prior to COVID, we were selling pet milk for 3 years, and herd shares and pet milk are both legal by statute, separate statutes in North Carolina. We had our herd tested every 2 weeks at a lab in Raleigh for Campylobacter, Salmonella, Listeria, E. coli 0157H7, and never did any come back positive. We are Farm Bureau members, and the Farm Bureau insures us for our product, raw milk. I find House Bill 467 really interesting because it includes specific standards that were in effect for decades for dairy farms that produced raw milk for medicinal use. This medicinal milk, called certified milk, was produced for the sound nutritional vitamin, mineral, and enzyme profile of fresh whole milk, a nutritional profile which is crippled to some degree by pasteurization. Certified milk was produced in a scrupulously hygienic manner. In fact, the grade A dairy standards that are in effect right now across the country are based on the standards for the certified milk back then. House Bill 467 completes a loop started long ago to produce the highest quality, most wholesome raw milk that was recommended by revered pediatricians. When and how did the sale of one of nature's most perfect foods become a crime? How is it legal to sell uncooked raw meat, raw seafood, alcohol, and tobacco, and yet unprocessed milk is more difficult to obtain than marijuana? And I see that Louisiana now has marijuana dispensaries here. Raw milk stands alone as the only food that's ever been outlawed. Why are there otherwise law-abiding citizens continually denied access to this product? The dangers of raw milk are repeatedly stated by health officials, but there are also dangers of pasteurized milk that aren't stated. From an October 2020 peer-reviewed journal article in the Canadian Journal of Public Health titled "Disease Outbreaks Linked to Pasteurized and Unpasteurized Dairy Products in Canada and the United States," the Systemic Review, academic researchers who had no compelling or conflicting interest sifted through 13 years of data, including data directly from the CDC. Included were outbreak reports where the pathogenic microbe was confirmed in both the patient and the dairy product through laboratory testing. The results showed more hospitalizations and more deaths due to pasteurized milk than to raw milk. Over the 13 years, raw milk accounted for 124 hospitalizations, whereas pasteurized milk accounted for 134 hospitalizations. Raw milk accounted for 5 deaths, and pasteurized milk accounted for 17 deaths. But pasteurized milk also accounted for 20 fetal tragedies of miscarriage and spontaneous abortion. Raw milk had 0 accounted to that. So we never hear about these pasteurized milk problems and these sad statistics, and I don't know why, honestly. Raw milk is vilified, and even though more deaths are accounted to pasteurized milk. And as a dairy veterinarian and dairy farmer, I certainly don't want to disparage milk, raw or pasteurized, because neither are poison. They're both wholesome. But people want a choice. And if you look at how raw milk and pasteurized milk, just pasteurized milk if you will, stacks up against other foods that are associated with foodborne illness, CDC says 48 million people get sick a year. That's 1 in 6 people a year from foodborne illness. 128,000 a year are hospitalized, and 3,000 people die a year from foodborne illness. Raw milk accounted for 5 deaths over 13 years by that independent, unbiased study. The high-path avian flu, or H5N1, in dairy cows is big news right now. The USDA itself says that H5N1 in dairy cows is self-limiting. And it mainly results in just decreased milk production, and the cows come back into production. Cows may leave the herd because something else is wrong with them, but they come back. As of last week, the USDA data shows only 46 herds over the last 2 months of the 20,000 herds in the United States testing positive. In North Carolina, we had 1 herd back in early April, no more herds since then. So I have to wonder how contagious and infectious is this disease that is really big time in the news. It's not spreading like wildfire. In fact, dairy veterinarians I've talked with kind of question about why is it getting all the press. There were, in one study, 12 barn cats died of 24 at the original farm in Texas where the disease was found. There have been no other studies since then showing barn cats dying. It's just one study from a month and a half ago. So, and if you know about barn cats, they're not looked after that well usually, and they tend to have kind of snotty noses, runny eyes, and whatnot, and they scavenge infected birds, and maybe those cats scavenged some birds that were domestic or wild and got the disease and succumbed to it. Probably more so than healthy house cats would have. In terms of raw milk and pathogens, Dr. Kent and Ramey Gisha, who are in the Panhandle of Texas, I talked with them recently. I asked them about the situation, and they've owned 2 dairies before, 1,000 head conventional dairy, 250 cow organic dairy, and they said that the risk of raw milk is low. We did not consume raw milk from the tank of the big dairy. Not enough accountability on large operation with 2 shifts of milk cans. At the organic dairy, we had 1 family milking, and they knew the milk was for raw consumption, so it was a completely different situation. Notably, the bird flu hasn't transferred from Texas to Louisiana. Delaware, a tiny, distant state with a gigantic poultry industry, is currently deliberating about raw milk sales. Louisiana has 52 dairies left, and Delaware only has 13. Last week, their Senate Ag Committee, just like yourselves, were deliberating about raw milk. And they listened to testimony from their state's agricultural officials. The Secretary of Agriculture of Delaware spoke and very clearly stated multiple times of being in favor of raw milk sales, while also admitting that when it was brought up previously in 2014, it wasn't the right time. It is now. Their state veterinarian is also in favor of raw milk sales, as is their Farm Bureau. Their Senate Ag Committee doesn't want dairy to disappear. If it does, people are going to go to Pennsylvania and buy milk, just like people here in Louisiana are buying milk from Mississippi and Texas, and that sends money out the door of the state. All foods have inherent risks. I can buy eggs when I leave here today, but I can't buy raw milk. Why shouldn't I if it's made to House Bill 467 standards that reflect certified milk from way long ago that was considered medicinal? In conclusion, if I may, when born and the umbilical cord snaps, we humans, from that moment forward, are independent in the world and try in so many ways to forge a reconnection to our original physical source of life. And obviously, we cannot stitch the umbilical cord back together. So we go through life seeking connection with others, oftentimes in vain, perverse, and self-defeating ways. There's really only one way to connect to our original source of life, and that is through and with our relationship with God. And while some may find it novel, drinking milk, that most basic physical nutrient for a mammal, any mammal, is the closest physical, natural way to be closest to our original source of life. Please allow God's intended natural design for milk drinking mammals of all species to be honored by allowing well-produced and unprocessed milk as defined by House Bill 467 for citizens here in Louisiana. Thank you.